How you doing, folks? I'm back this time with something a little different. A book review. I don't read very many books, sadly. Don't ever really have the time to do so. So it really takes strong subject matter for me to really jump in and dig into a book. Because when I start reading a book, part of the reason why I don't read very often is I can't put it down. I'll sit on my ass and read a book until it's done for how many ever days it takes. But this book is recently released on Deliberation Press, which is deliberationpress.com. This is Damn the Machine, the story of Noise Records, written by David E. Gelke. David used to be a writer, maybe he still is, for the online publication called Blistering. I think he's also involved in Dead Rhetoric. I can't remember. I read a lot of shit in a very short period of time, so some of the information seeps out. But Noise Records was formed in the early 80s in Berlin, Germany by Karl Ulrich Bach, and it is without a doubt one of the most influential record labels in my younger years, getting me more and more into heavier music. And I couldn't wait to go to the tape store, the record store, Camelot Music, and buy anything and everything that had the official Noise logo on it. And in a lot of ways, that mentality helped me create my own record. Helped me create my own record label, where I wanted to make sure that everything I put out had a certain level of quality and an iconic logo on there. So if people picked it up in a store or saw it online, knew that you see the Beinrune logo, that there's going to be a level of quality, both musically and production-wise, attached to it. And for a lot of years, Noise maintained that level of quality for me. And I always looked up to Karl Walter Bach. I always thought, this is he is very much so, was a visionary of German heavy metal, thrash metal, bringing it to the world. This book has been, polarizing. It's really changed my opinion on. If I would have reviewed this book halfway, I would have had a very negative opinion on Karl Walter Bach, to be honest with you. He treated Noise Records as a business, which I guess most successful businessmen do treat their businesses as business. He did not get personally involved with his bands. He gave them money, just enough money to survive, maybe not even just enough money to survive. In a lot of cases, treated some of the bands that he's seen as, maybe lesser, he kind of treated them like shit. But getting into this book, the author writes some acknowledgments here. This book has been authorized by Karl Ulrich Walter Bach, but in no way is he involved in the editing process, nor will he receive any of the book's royalties. So what does that mean? That means that Karl Walter Bach is a heavy contributor to this book in the fact that he sat in and gave countless hours of interviews to David for this book. And in turn, what else is such a big part of Noise Records that needs to be covered to make this a complete overview of the label is candid interviews with the bands that were on the label. So basically, he interviewed Karl endlessly for this book, and he would interview bands like Creator, Corner, Halloween, all the players and all the bands that were big for Noise Records. And Karl was able to see these interviews. So he could see everything that anyone had to say about him, about the label, about how they were treated. And he had no problem still signing off on it, saying, yeah, that's fine, it's all part of it. And that really changed my perspective on the man, knowing that he knew himself that he was a bastard to some of these bands. But in the end, letting them have their say and saying, I'm not going to influence what they have to say at all. I don't want to have a hand in changing anything they had to say. Put it all out there, and it is what it is. And at the end of the day, Noise Records was a business. Carl started out as, in his young era, as an anarchist. He was very much into punk music. In fact, in his younger years, he was involved in some political movement in Germany that Germany was trying to snuff out because of Nazism and all those other things. Any sort of brewing political discourse was seen as a potential threat and bad in light of Germany's political history. So apparently Carl was leaving to go Molotov cocktail a government office. And he was ratted out by one of his friends in his anarchist circle. So as he left his house with Molotov cocktail stuff on him, he was arrested and made an example of, essentially. He spent almost 2 years in prison in Berlin or Munich, I can't remember exactly where. Afterwards, he got out and got involved in the art scene and music and started a punk label. He was a squatter in some warehouse with some other people, some other crust punks. He started releasing these 7-inch records, these punk compilations of German-speaking bands that took off. And he started selling thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. And he did all of his business activities through a phone booth, just not too far away from where he lived. And his warehouse space, which he got for free, he was squatting in it along with other people, became warehouse space and label stuff, and it became harder and harder for him to hide the fact that he was making money on this label, which in the crust punk anarchist ethos of the moment, making money was seen as a bad thing. So he had to keep his income quiet, and he got kind of tired of having to hide the fact that he was making money, and he got kind of tired of the punk aesthetic. Maybe not the sound of it. I think he actually really enjoyed punk. But he wanted more, and he heard early on some of these metal bands coming up and decided he was going to start releasing metal bands. Start a new label, Noise Records. Opened up in his own office in Berlin, in a seedy district of town, and from there, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Read the goddamn book, but his journey was very interesting to me, and the book goes on. There's like a chapter for each band. Celtic Frost was probably one of the most influential bands on Walter Bach's label, and he treated them like garbage. Let's just put it out there. I don't know if he ever really found much worth in their music. Obviously, the sales were very good, but he would withhold cost living wages from the band while they're in the studio. So Tom and crew would have to go to the grocery store and scrape up money to buy a can of tuna. Shit like that. It's just not good artist relations. It's just living like, treating them like dogs. Creator, one of the biggest bands on the label. I think he always kind of saw that band as, young and unimpressive and just kind of working Joes below him in a way. And he would call up Milla and tell him, get to Berlin, we need to have a meeting. Of course, Milla didn't have all this money to scrape. He scraped together money to get to Berlin, only for Carl to walk in the office and say, I don't have time to deal with you right now. We'll do this again another day. shit like that is like this powerhead um, exerting your will on other people. I mean, that looking back now were very not influential only to Noise Records, but influential to a musical genre as a whole. Thrash metal couldn't have existed without Halloween, Creator, Sabat. But the reality, about midway through, I was getting really pissed at this guy. I'm thinking, man, this guy is a piece of crap. I always looked up to this guy just for the things he had done, but not knowing the man himself. But as I read on and got to get more of his perspective, I kind of understand, because he treated it as a business. He was in it to make money. This was his livelihood. He lived very well off of it. Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen, but the results are he actually spearheaded an entire movement of amazing, influential music. As you go through and you read bands, basically Carl would write these guys really complex contracts that did not offer them much. And bands like Creator, Celtic Frost, Halloween to a certain extent, were young, impressionable, and excited that they were even going to be released on a record label. So they would blindly sign a contract that was not in their best interest, and they would be stuck on it. So I can understand their animosity towards Carl, but on the same token, Carl didn't twist their arm to sign the contract. The bands that actually read the contract and ran it by a lawyer, the lawyers were like, this is not a contract you want to sign. Then they would get a manager, and the manager would renegotiate their contracts. The bands that did not live off of music solely, like Tankard, have nothing but good things to say about Carl Walter Bach. Tankard kept their day jobs and would play festivals and do their thing. Bands like Creator were all in. Bands like Celtic Frost were all in. They had no other jobs at the time. They lived off their music, and because they weren't getting money that they thought they were owed, and especially once they start seeing all of the albums they were selling, they started getting a little bit upset, of course, and coupled with the fact that Carl treated them kind of like dog shit. Basically, this is cutting it all down. My perception of Noise Records has changed a bit, but it does not take away the fact that the releases that Carl has put out over the years are very influential and very important to me, and the Noise Records is still very important to me. I guess Noise Records is opening back up again. I don't know all of the... I think BMG is reissuing all of the entire catalog. I don't know if that's true or not. That would be fucking incredible if it was. I could definitely fill in some holes much cheaper than I could trying to get original pressings. But this book really took me through a lot of thoughts and emotions regarding my past and growing up invested in this label very much so, and the man behind it. And again, halfway through I would have absolutely hated this guy. Towards the end, I kind of see why he ran things the way he did as a business perspective. And it follows this label all the way down to its unraveling, and grunge, the explosion of grunge, how it killed metal. In a lot of it wasn't just the hair metal bands that suffered, it was the heavy bands too. There was a while in the US in particular that a lot of people did not give a shit about metal anymore. I was not one of them, but grunge changed a lot of people's minds when it come to heavier music. And it goes into great detail on how the label tanked, and now Carl is changed his business model to management. He is band management, and he talks about how he is grateful for this because in this digital era it is really kind of dumb to even have a record label. He said bands are much better suited having good management than they are a good record label. Which in a lot of, it's true. I mean, the way the internet is gauged, do we really even need record labels anymore? Probably not. If a band's got a good marketing plan, has a good fan base, gets out and plays live, has a good manager, they have the tools in their home to promote and benefit, make off money off their own bands without having a third party involved. So yeah, I mean, he ended it with that very real point. Um, and you know, makes one that runs a record label. You know, I'm certainly in no way near the Noise Records level, but you know, because I really would much rather have personal relationships with some of these bands. And it's one thing he has changed on. I think he says now, as in a management, as being a band's manager, he can have a personal connection and help these bands try to get bigger and offer them some business acumen. Where it sounds like he kind of regretted not having more of a personal connection with the bands on Noise, but he did it that way for a specific reason, is not to make, you know, have personal views or personal relationships cloud business decisions. I get it, but basically, boiling down, I've rambled on a lot about this. This is an excellent book. Even if you're not a big Noise Records fan, you're just interested in industry stuff, there is a lot of really interesting things here. There are pictures, but there is a lot of information, and it's really cool at the end. There is all of the... where is he at? I just seen a picture. There's Carl. There is a Noise discography legend in the back, which is very, very cool. I have not gone through it yet to see how I'm how I've done, but I've got all the essential shit for sure. But definitely check this book out. I got it for $20 some off of Amazon, brand new. David Gilkey did a great job. Very informative, fun read. You processed an awful lot of information, put it under one roof, and made it very enjoyable. So that's it for now. Book review. If you guys get the time, definitely check out Damn the Machine, the story of Noise Records. I know there's a lot of you out there, especially you older types, who care about such things. Definitely check it out. Good shit. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.